Hi everyone, in this tutorial we'll be going over blend modes and layer styles in After Effects. Alright, let's get started. So this should be pretty easy for you since we've already used blend modes and layer styles in Photoshop, but the way that we access them is a little different in After Effects. So the first thing I'm going to do is just put a video into my timeline. And I have this shot of a train that I took, and let's use some blend modes to see if we can get some more texture to this video. So I've got a few images here. I have my color texture and this other texture here. So I'm just going to drag this one in. So it's going to come in like this. It's a lot smaller than our composition, so I'm going to scale it up. We will lose some resolution, but since I'm just using it to blend over the other one, that's not going to matter. So I'm going to want to rotate and scale this. And I'm going to do that with my transform options in the layer here. So first thing I'm going to do is hit R to bring up rotation. And I'll just rotate that 90 degrees. You can click on it and input the number if you want. And then I'm going to hit S to bring up my scale. And then I'll just scale it up big enough to cover my composition. Okay, so now we want to blend this top layer into our train footage. So to do that, we can come up to Layer, and then here we have our layer options. And we can go to Blending mode and select one right here. So let's try Overlay to start with. So now what that did was, just like in Photoshop, it blended it in by overlaying our texture over top the train footage. So if I hit play, we still see our train footage underneath, but we get that texture over top. And if we want to adjust the opacity of the texture, we can hit T with our layer selected. And again, T is going to bring up opacity. Or if you want to access all of these without a shortcut, you can just expand these and see all of your transforms here. So we can turn down the opacity all the way if we want, or bring it up a little bit and just give it a little bit of an overlay. We can also choose our blend mode here, and if that isn't showing, what you want to do is hit this button here, Toggle Switches and Modes. So that just hides it. So we can just click on this drop-down menu and select our blend mode in here. You can blend any type of layer in here, so we can also blend video if we want. I'll just delete out my texture. And I have this smoke footage here. Again, if I just double click it here, we can view it without actually dropping it into our composition. So I have this wispy smoke, and I think if I use the right blend mode, I can get rid of the black behind it and just keep the smoke in front of my train. I'll go back over to my composition, and I'll just drag this and drop it over top. Again, this one's smaller, so I'm just going to hit S to scale it up. And I'll scale it to cover my composition. Okay, now let's try some blend modes to see if we can get this to blend over our footage. I'm going to start with an overlay. So we can see the smoke in there, but it really darkened up our footage a lot. So I think I want to try something else. Maybe add. And that looks good, so I think that's the one we want to use. Our footage looks unchanged, and we can see the smoke blending nicely. So I'll just hit play here, and you can see all of our smoke here from the footage right here blending in. If it goes past this layer here, so this is where my train footage ends, it has nothing to blend over anymore, so now we just see it as is. But then if we come back to our train, then it's blending over it there. Okay, I'm just going to delete out this smoke layer. I'm not going to go into all of the different blend modes since we've covered those all in Photoshop already. Alright, next let's take a look at the different layer styles we can apply, which are going to be similar to Photoshop. And I'll just make a new text layer to apply those to. Okay, so to apply a layer style to our text, I'm first going to just select our layer, and then I'll go up to Layer in our menu, and down to Layer Styles. And so here we have similar ones to Photoshop. So let's start with just adding a drop shadow. So what that did was added a drop shadow to our text here, and also created a Layer Styles menu under our layer. So to edit the shadow, we just come down in here, and we can expand the drop shadow option. If this isn't open again, we just go through and expand all of the ones until you find it. So all of these options here are the same ones we have in Photoshop. They're just laid out a little differently. You can adjust the blend mode of your shadow here. We can change the shadow color if you want. I'll just undo that. We can adjust the opacity of it. We can adjust the angle of it. We can adjust the distance, so that will push it further away and bring it closer in. We can adjust the spread. We can adjust the size of it, and that's blurring it as we make it bigger. You have the option to add noise to it, which kind of adds that grainy effect to it. And I'll just turn that back down. So all of our options are in here and similar to Photoshop, so it should be pretty easy to understand. To delete a layer style, we can just click on it in here and just hit delete, and that's going to take off the drop shadow. All right, let's just take a look through some more layer styles. We have color overlay here, which I showed you in Photoshop, and that's just going to change the overall color of it. If I click that, change it to red, we'll go into our options here, and we can see our color here. Now with the text, we can go in and change the color here, but what's nice about this is that all of these options here, you'll notice, have a little stopwatch. And pretty much any option you have in here is going to have that watch, which means we can animate it. So say we want to animate between colors. We want to start off at one color and switch it to another. So I'm just going to set a keyframe here, and I think I'll change this to a different color. Maybe something like that. And then over time, I'll have it change to something else. So now if we back up to the beginning and hit play, it's going to slowly change color over time. So that's what's great about After Effects. Any option you have in here, as long as it has that stopwatch, you can animate it. And let's just try one more layer style for an example. Maybe let's add an outer glow to it. So I'll go to our outer glow options, and it has similar options to our shadow. So the option to make it look like it's glowing is going to be our size here. So if we adjust that and scale it out, it's going to feather that glow out. We can adjust the opacity on it. We can adjust the noise, but I'll leave that down to 0. And again, since we have the stopwatches here, that means we can animate it. So maybe let's animate the size of it. Let's set a keyframe at the very beginning, and then we'll go to the end here. And we want to set another keyframe. So again, to do that, I don't want to hit my stopwatch because that's going to clear them. I'm going to hit the little keyframe there. Okay, so I think I want it to start glowing at the beginning and end at this spot here. So I'm going to move back to the beginning, and then I'm going to turn the size of this down to 0. So now our first keyframe there, we have no glow on, and then our last keyframe, we have it glowing and the color change. So now over 4 seconds, the color should change and our glow should expand. And I'll just hit play to preview that. So that's one of the really cool things about After Effects. Pretty much any layer style or different effect you apply, you're going to be able to animate that. Alright, that's going to do it for this tutorial on blend modes and layer styles.